guys, welcome to the meat cookery unit. So today we're going to make a Cuban traditional dish called ropa vieja. We are working with meat, so today we're going to be working with flank steak, okay? And part of your mise en place is getting everything ready and separating your meat from your vegetables. Even though it's all going in one pot, I still want you to kind of separate. So if you notice, one side is my skirt steak or flank steak. Another name for flank steak is skirt steak. It's more of your tougher meat, so it's great on combination cooking. So today and throughout this unit, you're going to learn about various cooking methods: dry heat, moist heat. This method is very similar to making a stew, so it's more of a Latin American stew, ropa vieja, and we're going to be using both dry heat and moist heat. First, I'm going to use dry heat. Notice the oil in the pot, and then we're going to do moist heat at the end. Okay, so that's ready to go. I kind of want to show you my vegetables really quickly. I have clean gloves on. I went ahead and sliced onions. So you're going to have some onion. You're going to have some sweet peppers that we'll use at the end. You're going to use capers, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We're going to add some tomato juice to it. We're going to add some sofrito to it, which is a really nice seasoning. It's really added to stews and soups. I've went ahead and minced my garlic, and then I kind of just want to show you how to julienne a pepper. Remember, it's not in like a jalapeno. You would eat the seeds. You don't want to eat the seeds in a pepper, so I like to remove the seeds and I like to remove the skin, okay, when I'm julienning my pepper. And then I just kind of want to show you really quickly. Julienne, remember, is thin slices, so firm grip on your knife. Remember, sharp is safe. You don't want to put your finger directly on top of the knife. You want a firm grip. And it's just slices, okay? So we're just gonna julienne this pepper. Half of it will be added soon, half of it will be added last, okay? So that's ready to go. I have my seasonings, and I'm ready. One thing about the stew is it calls for beef broth. So you can, it'll depend. Some of your teachers might add or might buy liquid beef broth, and some will buy the cubes. So the cubes, it'll just be 1 cup ratio to a cube, and your teacher will explain that. Today we're using beef liquid. Okay, so that's been pre-measured. All right. Hi. Now we're going to talk about our steak. So you are in the meat cookery unit. This is called a skirt or flank steak. Okay, it's your toughest cut of meat. That's why it's perfect for moist heat methods or a combination of moist and dry heat methods. Okay, for like stews. So what we're going to do, I want to kind of teach you how to determine the lines. So you want to go against the grain. So if you see these little lines right on the muscle, okay, you never want to cut with the lines, okay? All that's going to do is toughen up your meat, which is already tough, okay? If you want, you can get rid of some of this fat, so it's just called trimming the fat. Otherwise, there's a little bit of marbling, and you learned about that, so specks of fat is good. Okay, otherwise we kind of just want to get rid of this marbling here and turn down our oil. So what we're going to do first is we're going to sear the meat. So part of searing is I'm going to season it first with adobo. And this is prep, so I'm not touching the seasoning bottle with my dirty gloves, okay? And you're calling for about a teaspoon of adobo seasoning. Your adobo seasoning calls for, it's a mix of oregano, it's a mix of garlic powder, onion powder, okay? Already set up for you. And remember, the steak, you gotta flavor it a little bit, so when it cooks in with the moisture, it's really going to blend in with all those flavors, okay? And now we're going to cut it into strips. Again, against the grain, okay? So the line is here, so I'm gonna start here, and I'm just gonna cut into strips, just like that, and then I'm going to sear it. When we sear, all I'm gonna do is prep my oil, so about a tablespoon of oil. Okay, so this is ready to go. You see how tough it is already? If you cut it the other way, it's going to be even tougher. So again, against the grain, just like that, this is ready to go. My oil has now, I turned on my heat. I turned it on to 150. It's already hot. You don't want to shock the meat, okay? All you want to do is caramelize the protein. So if it's dancing, you're ready to go. All you want to do is caramelize the protein, you guys, and the sugars, okay? That's it. That's all we're doing. I'm going to sear it on one side, and then I'm going to sear it on the other. Part of your prep is just taking off your gloves, getting this washed, throwing this away, getting a pair of tongs and a fresh plate, and then we're just going to sear it one side really quickly, about a minute, and then sear on the other side, and then we're going to add it to our stew. Thank you. All right, and we're back. So what we're really quickly doing is searing the meat on both sides, okay? So I did one side, I did the other side. I'm using tongs, and all I'm gonna do is transfer it to a plate and let it sit, okay? Just let it rest. That's all you're doing. Is it still raw? Yes. If you fully cook it, then it's going to be really dry in the stew, and we wanna shred the meat, okay? So that's all you're doing. Step 2, okay? I'm gonna move my tongs to the side. I'm gonna just grab a scraper, okay? Just to kind of stir up my oil. So now with the fat seasonings, okay, and the oil, I'm going to transfer my onions that I just sliced. And this is a quick process. That's why you have to, at this point, have everything nice and tossed and ready to go. Okay, so julienne peppers, I'm going to just do half. And my full half of my onion, okay? The full recipe calls for half of an onion, so you need the whole thing. But with your peppers, just do half. And all I'm going to do is soften these a little bit and saute. So saute, remember, little fat, high heat. That's my saute. And now we're going to start this. Now this is the fun part. We're going to start making the stew. So I want to talk to you about the beef broth. Let it do its thing while you're kind of listening to me. So there are options. I told you you're going to use a liquid beef broth. Okay. Your teacher depends on what they buy or what's in stock. So there's option number 1. You don't have to do anything but pour, okay? That's your beef broth, liquid. Option number 2, there's a beef broth powder, okay? And the ratio is 1 teaspoon to a cup of water. So all you would do is dissolve this liquid, or this powder in liquid. And then the other option, we make chicken broth out of this. So there are little cubes that are beef or chicken broth. It depends on your ratio. These are very salty, so again, I would omit the salt, or I would do a little bit of salt if you're using the cubed version. Again, the ratio is always on the box. It varies. This is 1 cube per 2 cups of water. Don't add it to cold water. The cube is just going to sit there. You have to add it to hot water, okay? So we went with option 1. So what I'm going to do now is add my beef broth to it. Okay, so allow your onions to caramelize just a little bit. I'm going to turn down the heat so you can actually see. Okay, but we are working with medium heat. I was working with 300 because we're sauteing. So my onions are looking a little golden yellow. That's what we want. And they're really cooking in with the beef flavors, because remember I seared my meat on here. And now I'm ready for my beef broth. So I'm going to gently start cooking this. Now it's going to kind of calm down on me a little bit, and this is what I like. Okay, so my beef broth is in. Now I'm going to add sofrito. Sofrito is a seasoning that's added in Caribbean cooking, actually, but it is added. This is a Latin dish, but like I told you, it's very popular in Puerto Rico too, which is in the Caribbean. So sofrito has a bunch of herbs and spices, and like I said, it's used in soups and stews. So the nice thing about this stew is it contains so many seasonings. So that's sofrito. We added adobo seasoning to our steak. We added the beef broth. Now I'm going to add my garlic. Okay, so you have 2 options. You can add your garlic. It's going to soften, or you can add your garlic with your sauteed vegetables. Okay. This is going to cook for 45 minutes. Your garlic is going to soften and kind of absorb the flavors. It's up to you though. I like to saute. But I also like to do this method. Okay, now we're going to add tomato sauce. Everything's pre-measured, so part of your day 1 is pre-measuring everything. So this is your tomato sauce, 2 ounces. So you're going to weigh this, okay? Or since it's a liquid, you can use your liquid measuring cup. Tomato sauce. Now we're going to add Sazon seasoning. I'm going to grab my seasoning. Calls for half a teaspoon. Okay. So I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit. I want you to pre-measure this, but I've made this before, so I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit. Sazon is literally seasoning. Okay, seasoning in Spanish and Mexican culture, cooking. I'm going to move that here, and then I'm going to just stir just like that. I'm going to crank up my heat to a boiling, so big bubbles, and once it reaches big bubbles, I'm going to add my steak to it. And I'm just going to clean as I go, okay? That's it. So my peppers are in here, my onions are in here, my garlic's in here, my onion, everything's gonna soften. It's gonna cook for 45 minutes. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna transfer my beef to it. And again, we did the hot method, okay? So the searing, and now we're gonna do the moist, okay? Just like that. And you want this underneath. You want the vegetables kind of on top, the meat underneath. And this is going to cook for 45 minutes. Now, your class period is going to end. So what I want you to do is you're going to cook it up until 5 minutes to the bell, and then we got to cool it down, okay? So I'm going to show you when we come back how I would cool it down. What I kind of want to show you really quickly is the big bubbles. So you want it simmering, okay? So big bubbles are starting to produce. Once you hit big bubbles or boiling method, you're going to simmer it to about 250. We don't want to overwhelm it with high heat. And now you're going to clean up, okay? Once I'm done cleaning up, I'm going to show you the cooling method. I'm going to show you how to make rice, and then we're going to season it, and then I'll show you kind of how to shred the beef, okay? We'll be right back. Hi y'all, so this is day 2 of your ropa vieja. So day 1 was all about mise en place. Day 2 is about cooking your stew. You're kind of entering the last, I would say, 15 minutes of class. So if you take a look, my stew's been simmering for about at least 30 minutes. The recipe says 45. So you want it simmering, you don't want it boiling. Otherwise it's way too hot, it's gonna toughen up the meat. We're ready to shred. So once it's been simmering for about 30 minutes, we're ready to shred the beef. So you're going to take 2 forks, grab a clean cutting board, and you're just going to separate your meat just like this. So we're shredding. So this stew is a shredded beef recipe, okay? If your meat's pretty tough, you can also cut your meat, okay? So you can use a knife and just cut it up. Otherwise, this piece was a little fatty, so that's what's happening. Okay, otherwise 2 forks work perfect. They don't have to be completely shredded, okay? This is going to be served over rice, so it's just gonna be kind of a subtle taste of meat, okay? And I'm gonna put this back in gently. Okay, so use your fork, guide it in, and then we're going to turn off the stew, and I'm gonna teach you the cooling down method. So the issue with just storing hot food in our fridge is it's going to spoil all the ingredients in our refrigerator if you were to just throw this in the fridge, and people have done that. You're also breaking food code, okay? So our food needs to cool down from 135 to 70 degrees per food code in 2 hours. So if you threw this in the fridge, it's not going to cool down in 2 hours. So it's super important that we use the right cooling method. And one of the cooling method is the ice method. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and what you have to do towards the end of the period, so one partner is shredding the beef, and one partner is going to cool it down. So you're going to grab a gallon-sized baggie, okay? You're going to grab a ladle, and all I'm going to do, if you want to use the little pitcher to kind of hold this in, otherwise one partner can hold. I just don't want you to hurt yourself because this is super hot. We're going to put it in a baggie. You're going to label the bag prior, so put your names on it and the period number and today's date. Just so you're following food code, we always label today's date. And have the ice ready to go. And then once you put your entire stew in, again, if you're making more, which you shouldn't, this recipe it serves 2, and 1 gallon baggie is perfect. Okay. So one partner is starting clean up the other partner. Let this, do not close it, okay? Let it kind of air out just a little bit before you drop it into the ice, okay? So all I'm gonna do, I'm gonna let it air out, just like that, okay? And leave it, have it labeled with the period number, again with today's date and your name, and this will cool down. By the end of the period, it will not be steaming so much. We're gonna close it and we're gonna store it in the fridge, okay? So again, you're following proper food code, we're cooling it down, and then day 3, you're gonna reheat, you're gonna add the rest of the flavors and the toppings, and then we're gonna serve it over rice. And I'll be right back, thank you. Hi, so this is day 3 of ropa vieja. So pretend that you just entered the classroom, you're gonna go to the fridge, you're going to grab your stew, okay, with your name on it. Obviously wash your hands and everything ahead of time. Grab a ladle, not a label. Grab a ladle, grab your pan, saute pan, and then throw this baggie away. Remember, we have to use the cooling down method. Now we're going to reheat. So you're going to reheat per food code to 165, okay, or big bubble, so boiling. So you'll know it's reached 165. You don't even have to temp it if you reach it to boiling. So that's my method that I always use. I reheat to boiling, big bubble, so I know bacteria. I know all the bacteria has died, all the cross-contamination, if there was any. And just, again, following food code, you need to reheat. Okay, as it's reheating, we're going to add the fun stuff. So there are some seasonings for this. Okay, so these are called capers. So capers go well with tomato sauce, and we've added tomato sauce. They're very similar to they're very similar to olives, but they're actually an immature flower bud that's found in the Mediterranean. Okay, so that's kind of cool. Then we have our pimento olives. Okay, so they're stuffed olives. Pimento is a type of pepper, and if you buy these types of olives, they're already stuffed with the pepper, okay? And this recipe calls for that sort of pepper. So all I did is I measured out about 2 ounces, and I sliced them in half, okay? Now, olives are very salty, capers are very salty, so we're not adding any more salts to this dish. Okay, and this gets added last. You don't want your olives super mushy, but you do want to add all of your like your onion and garlic ahead of time just to soften. The recipe also calls for some peppers, some fresh peppers to give it that crunch flavor, but there's also, remember, you did half the peppers ahead of time, day 1 and day 2, and then day 3 you're going to add a couple more julienne fresh peppers, okay? So these are my red bell peppers, and then we're adding, so there's 2 types. You could either do pimentos. So pimento, it's kind of hard to find. It is a pepper. Remember, I told you it's in the sweet olives. Or you can just do sweet Italian peppers, okay? Very, very good substitute for this recipe. So it has the roasted sweet peppers. We're gonna bring this to a boil, and notice it's already kind of simmering on me. The shredded beef is in there. Okay, it has all the seasonings, just to kind of go over. Remember, it has the adobo seasoning on the skirt steak. It has the sofrito. Remember, the sofrito is a tomato-based seasoning. It's used for stews, okay, in Mediterranean and Latin American cooking, especially Latin American. The capers are in there, the olives are in there. The last part of your mise en place and cooking method is the rice. So this is served traditionally over rice or tortillas. You could add cilantro on top. I love to garnish this with cilantro, so I washed my cilantro, I chopped it up ahead of time, and that's ready to go. So notice my mise en place, everything is in its place. I have one, I'm just eating this, but you and your partner can have 2 plates ready to go. And then you're gonna make minute rice, okay, or whatever type of rice your teacher buys. Please read the box. For minute rice, it's super easy. You do 1 cup to 1 cup ratio. So 1 cup rice, 1 cup water. All you do is add water, bring it to a boil, big bubbles, then drop your rice in, turn it off, and that's it. Okay, it's super easy. And you're just gonna fluff, okay? So don't damage the rice. All we're gonna do is just kind of fluff it up just like that. Look how beautiful it is. I didn't have to do anything. I don't have to season it because, trust me, the stew has so much seasoning, okay? And then I'm going to grab my wooden spoon. I'm going to put the stew on a bed of rice. So my rice goes on top. If you want to season your rice, you're more than welcome to throw in a little bit of cilantro, some pepper. I would not do salt though, okay? You could also throw in pepper to your stew. That's up to you. I know that I've added a ton of seasoning to this, so I'm good, okay? But also taste as you go. Just don't double dip. You can always add more. You cannot omit. Now, this has reached 165, over 165, because I know it's boiling, okay? So about 212. That's what you want. It's perfectly reheated. I know there's no bacteria in it, especially because this is a combination food. So there's there's vegetables, there's meat. So we definitely want to cook it to above 165. I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to use my ladle. I'm so excited. This smells so good. And then, again, this goes on a bed of rice or served with tortillas. You can add some sour cream to it. I love peppers, so I'm going to do a bunch of peppers. Remember, it has the sweet Italian pepper, it has the red pepper, it has the olives. I'm going to garnish with cilantro. If you're making it for yourself, then just make sure you wash your hands. If you're making it for your partner, please wear gloves. And that is your ropa vieja. It's a delicious stew that uses both combination methods. Remember, you're dry and you're moist. It adds a ton of seasonings. It teaches you from all the way from canned food all the way to reheating. Okay, so it goes through the entire flow of food, part of the food code, and it's very rustic, it's very humble, it's a delicious dish, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you.